Hello, and thank you for joining us here on the Neutral Zone. I am Phil Milani, joined as always by my trusty sidekick, my partner in crime. Really, the best way to describe this person is my everything. It's at Eric Dalala.
Phil, good to be with you.
It is. It is good to be with you as well, Eric, because there's nobody I'd rather reminisce a sorrowful day here in the Mile High City with than other than you.
That's
Was that
true.
in English? I think that was in English.
I understand Phil. I've learned how to do that.
Well, hopefully I'm a little more coherent the rest of the show because we've got a great show in store for NZ Nation today, our regular day after episode of the Neutral Zone. We'll talk about the Broncos 34-27 loss in Atlanta. We'll dive into a couple of things that Vic Fangio had to say today. Plus, we have a couple of questions that I think that Broncos country is really thinking about this today, Eric. Are these just growing pains or something more for this team? Are there some flaws here, or is this just simply a young team that's learning? And then also, of course, we'll talk about Drew Lock. His performance. Is the quarterback position, Eric, holding this team back right now? Or do you feel like the whole team is sort of in a similar place, improving as the season goes on, learning, having some setbacks like they did against the Falcons, but bigger picture, just getting better and better? Or is this a team that's ready to win, but maybe a couple pieces holding the Broncos back right now? And of course, we'll dive into NZ Nation came through with some voicemails, some emails. So we'll definitely get to all of those. Thank you to everybody who sent in their stuff. You can, of course, leave a voicemail at 707-NEUTRAL, Eric, and we'll play your voicemail right on the air. Or, Eric, if they want to, they can email as well.
That's right. neutralzoneshow@gmail.com, Phil. A nice little spot to just send a little note or something like that.
Yeah. Just let us know what's on your mind, and we'll make this an interactive type of podcast. So we want this to be a back and forth, a good conversation. Eric, so with that, let's go ahead and just dive right into the game. The Broncos losing 34-27. What do you think, Eric, when you were watching that, and now you had a day to reflect a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, again, you just fall into a hole, and this time it was too much to overcome. I think on a positive note, I continue to be encouraged by how this team fights, how they continue to, it'd be really easy to fall into a 21-point deficit the last 2 weeks and just kind of mail it in and say, we're done here. The Broncos didn't do that for as bad as the defense was in the first half, and for as much as the offense struggled at times. They were able to put 3 scoring drives together in the fourth quarter. They were able to get the defensive stops they needed, obviously aided in part, Phil, by some just borderline atrocious clock management by the Falcons there in the fourth quarter, I thought. They had 3 3-and-outs in the fourth quarter and had a penalty on that final third down that even gave the Broncos a chance. But, hey, I think the overarching message is you cannot consistently win football games if you're going to fall behind like that. Even really good teams don't do that, and I'm not sure the Broncos quite fall in that category at the moment. And then maybe the other thought, Phil, is just I know the Falcons have won 3 out of 4 now. They've got a talented offense. The Broncos were disadvantaged because they didn't have Bryce Callahan or AJ Boye, but that's a game you need to win. The Falcons had 2 wins. It could have gotten you to 4-4. It could have meant a lot in terms of the direction of your season. And now you've essentially got to win the next 2 to make something of this year. And so just a tough lost opportunity, I think.
Yeah, wanted to play something from Vic Fangio, what he had to say about injuries in just a second, because I agree with you, Eric, that injuries really played a big role in the outcome of Sunday's game. But to me, the bigger thing was coming into that game, all week long, the talk was, we can't fall into another big hole like we did against the Chargers. That was with the messaging that we heard from the Broncos. And they said, hey, we came back against the Chargers in the fourth quarter, but let's not do that again. Let's have dancing Drew Lock show up a little bit earlier. I think that we talked about that. And they went out there and did the exact same thing. To me, that was the most concerning thing, is that heading into the game, they said, let's not do this. And then they went out there and did that. So whatever you want to say, the pressure coming into the game, knowing that you could get to 4-4, knowing that what was on the line, knowing that the offense was going to have to put up points against the Falcons team that had an explosive offense, just all of those things all together, and the Broncos weren't able to deliver.
No, it was, to be fair, it was different than a week ago, just because I think that against the Chargers, Drew Lock looked uncomfortable. He was throwing short of the sticks, wasn't willing to take some of these chances. He looked like he was playing about as cautious a football as you could possibly play. I didn't feel that way against the Falcons. There were mistakes that he made, certainly, but I think the Broncos were close there to scoring 14 points or 17 points in the first half. I mean, I think of 3 plays. You have that big pass to Noah Fant, and you immediately follow it up with a 5-yard loss by Phillip Lindsay because Grady Jarrett goes right through the line. That screws up your drive. I then go to a play where Drew Lock has Tim Patrick in the end zone open for a touchdown on the next drive. AJ Terrell's got his right, and AJ Terrell had his right arm held onto, and it's not called, and all of a sudden you kick a field goal. And then the last one is at the end of the first half, KJ Hamler gets absolutely demolished, hit in the helmet. And I don't want to put all this on calls, but in those situations, the outcome of the game looks different if you make 1 or 2 of those plays. And so in this first half, I saw those plays where if they go the other way, you score points, or if you're able to convert, you continue the drive. Whereas against the Chargers, there weren't even, those opportunities didn't even really exist in the first half. And so there was some progress. It was worsened by the fact that the defense couldn't stop them in the first half.
I agree with you that it did not feel like that Chargers game where it sort of was where like Drew Lock couldn't do anything. That's how that game sort of had that feel to it. But Eric, the numbers suggest a different story to me. 7 of 14, just 98 yards in that first half for Drew Lock. And that was going up against the second worst passing defense in the NFL, 4th overall worst defense. So maybe that had a little bit to do with it, just having a little bit of a better performance there. But, and we'll talk about this in just a little bit. It could be just some growing pains there, and that you're having to work through some of these things. Could be the injuries that caught up with this Broncos team. If you think about that right tackle position, Eric, was supposed to be Juwan James coming into the season. Then it was supposed to be Elijah Wilkinson. Then it was DeMar Dotson. He left the game with a groin injury. And then you insert Jake Rogers, and there were a couple of times where it looked like he was not on the same page with what he was supposed to be doing. And, playing next to him wasn't Graham Glasgow, who might be able to make up for some of those problems, or might be able to help a guy like Jake Rogers. It's Austin Schlottman instead. So when you have that kind of, level of caliber of player back to back next to each other on the same side of the line, understandably, defenses are going to attack that. And I think that you saw that time after time. Drew just had a lot of pressure in his face coming from that right side. That's no knock on those guys. It's just that, Jake Rogers is not Juwan James or Elijah Wilkinson even. And so, he's put into a tough spot where he's got to come out there, and the defense is going to attack that. And I feel like there were a couple of times where Drew just didn't have any chance.
No, and there were times, I don't think, kind of similar to the Patriots game, I don't think his receivers did him a lot of favors. There were a couple of times when Jerry Jeudy, I thought, should have held onto the ball. Not to jump to the end, Phil, but the first play of that last drive, if Jerry Jeudy's able to hold on to that pass, they have the ball probably at the 45-yard line with maybe you're able to get up there and spike it with 35 seconds left. And at least now you're in range to throw a Hail Mary or something over the next couple of plays. Tim Patrick, I thought, had a couple opportunities. So I don't think anybody played great. There were times, though, when you're right, Drew he looked off. I don't know if it was the pressure or not. And he seems to play his best when Um, he's just kind of free, not overthinking it. Part of the fourth quarter success is that they're playing off a little bit, but I think also it's just he's going out there and playing. He's not worried about some of the other stuff. He's got that confidence to just because he made some good throws. I mean, Phil, I posted something that his fourth quarter stats over the last 2 weeks: 25 of 39, 306 yards, 6 total touchdowns, 1 interception, and 117 passer rating. I know people will say that's garbage time stats, and it is to some degree, but he made some impressive throws there. That touchdown to Tim Patrick, that's a good throw.
Yes, of course it is. But something that we've talked about a lot this season and even with regards to the 5 games that Drew started at the end of last season, when the pressure is off, he's playing very well. When the season, is, sort of just your place in the standings is an afterthought, like the last 5 games last season, he's got nothing to lose. So he goes out there and plays free. In these fourth quarters, the last couple of weeks, he goes out there and plays free. It's a little bit different when you come into the game and you know that there's a lot of riding on it. There's some pressure there. Say what you want about the Falcons, the pressure was on the Broncos offense to be able to keep pace there. So there was some pressure there. And, there were some struggles there. And Eric, Drew Lock is going to get a lot of that blame. But if you don't blame Drew, the next person in line is offensive coordinator Pat Shurmur. That's just where that's where their mindset goes, is blame the quarterback, then you blame the play caller. I think that's a lot of comments on Twitter from fans seeing that. Here's what Vic Fangio had to say on Monday about his confidence level in Pat Shurmur.
My confidence is good. Pat's an experienced guy. He's been through this before. Good thing about being experienced, you've seen the highs and the lows. Unfortunately, we're going through the lows right now, but he's had plenty of highs in his career. And, we're optimistic that we'll get this thing turned around soon. We're going to be working to that end, both the players and the coaches. It's a cumulative effort between both players and coaches, and we're going to work hard to get that fixed.
So Eric, what did you think about Fangio's comments there? Obviously, still has a lot of confidence in Pat Shurmur. He's been through these types of situations before. He's worked with young quarterbacks. He seems pretty confident that the Broncos offense is going to be able to turn this thing around.
Yeah, and if you look at Shurmur's history in New York, he did that to some degree. I think the Giants, each of the last 2 years, added like 8 points per game or something like that to their scoring average over the final 8 weeks of the season. So that, that suggests that it's a progress. It takes patience, which I know is really difficult, but that's what this whole team is about. The coordinator in his first year installing his system, young quarterback, young skill players. It's all about that. Phil, I do think there are times when certainly a play call here or a play call here is confusing, or you don't quite get it watching it immediately on TV. But I suspect you watch teams around the league and that's the case. You go in particular some of these runs on 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10, and I think most people around the league would say that, hey, that's somewhat predictable, and maybe it is. I think the thought behind doing that is that if you throw incomplete on first down and then you throw incomplete on second down, and there were times, Phil, on Sunday when the Broncos just had trouble, being able to run the play without having pressure in Drew's face immediately. And so being able to get some of those free yards and set up a third and manageable, I think is probably the thinking behind that, at least, because the Broncos have struggled on third down, and it's not, to me, as much about what they're doing on third down as it is that they're not getting yards on first and second down. And so, maybe you don't like the call of a run on 2nd and 9 or 2nd and 10, but there is, there's a method to the madness there. Hopefully they can start executing that a little bit better. And, when you have success running the football, then you can go to play action, which we know that Drew has done well with. But when you're not running the ball well, and Phil, I think the Broncos had 1 rushing yard in the first quarter. When you're not running the ball well, you can't succeed in play action. So, or it's much more difficult. So, some of it's play calling, some of it's execution. I think patience overall is, we want there to be this instant fix, that it's just solved right away. And that's not the case. There's gonna be some highs, there's gonna be some lows. And you kind of just got to ride through it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Is that if you go over the course of the game, you're going to find maybe a couple play calls where he wishes maybe he had that back. But ultimately, it's up to guys to execute the play that's being called. And, just with the pressure that Drew was having in his face, hard to execute a lot of the play calls there. I will say it was a little bit befuddling the way the third quarter ended. They just let the clock seemingly just tick down, and when you look at the end of the fourth quarter, when they get the ball back, there's only there's less than a minute to play there. Maybe you wish you had some time left, but who knows how the fourth quarter would have gone. You can't go back in time and say, oh well, if you change this, you're going to have more time at the end of the game or whatnot. But I do think there are a couple times where you're like, oh, that's sort of an interesting thing, but ultimately you have to realize that Shermer's been in this league for a long time. You got to trust his experience and his ability to develop quarterbacks. And when you look back at this offense, no offseason, no preseason games. It's hard for everybody to get on the same page. That's not really an excuse at this point in the year, but I do think that, like you're saying, we just need to have a little bit of patience with this side of the ball.
Yeah, and I think there were times when, like 1st and 10, they get the ball back down 17-3. They're going to pass on first down, and that's an aggressive mindset that I like. Drew gets sacked because Philip Lindsay gets run over, and we've heard a lot. Get Philip Lindsay on the field more. Feed Phil. That's great, but if he can't pass protect, it's hard to do that. And I think you saw that reflected in the snap count yesterday, where Melvin Gordon played almost twice as much as Philip Lindsay. Then you go back to the end of the second half, to the first half, that last drive. You have that incompletion to KJ Hamler where he gets blasted in the helmet and there's no call. And then you run the ball on 2nd and 10. And I think that play call in particular was criticized. But if Melvin Gordon's able to, they're probably not expecting the run. So if he's able to get out on the edge and get 10 yards, people are probably saying, Pat Shermer, that's a great call. So some of it is execution. Some of it's a little bit of play calling. I do think, Phil, situationally, they need to be a little bit better. And you mentioned the end of the third quarter. As the 2-minute warning approach, Tim Patrick has to get out of bounds. I mean, he stayed in bounds, which cost them 16 seconds and went to the 2-minute warning. And that's a timeout, essentially. Because if you're able to score there before the 2-minute warning, now instead of having one timeout, you've got one timeout and the 2-minute warning. Maybe you have a minute and a half when you get the ball back, and it's a different situation. So you're right. You can't go back and say if this would have happened, then they definitely would have won. But from an execution standpoint, there needs to be improvement, and maybe from certain play calls that could happen as well.
Yeah. And, I think that, the offense didn't hit the red zone until there was less than 5 minutes left in the whole game. So finding some momentum, being able to get into a rhythm out there is a big thing. And, sometimes when you can't do that, it just looks bad. The product looks really bad when you're just not on the field. I think in that first half, the Falcons had the ball for more than 20 minutes, double what the Broncos had. So, and that was even with the Falcons hitting these big plays over the top. They just could not stay on the field, and it wasn't as bad as the Chargers game, but it was concerning to me. And, I think that the question is, are these growing pains? Is this a young team? You mentioned Tim Patrick not getting out of bounds. Is that just part of, hey, now that they've been in this situation, they're going to learn from this and get better? Or are there some serious flaws here? What do you think, Eric?
I think it's growing pains. I mean, I think there's too much talent on the offensive side of the ball right now, and you've seen too many good individual plays to suggest that it's anything else. I mean, Jerry Jeudy had a big drop there on the last drive of the game. There's no other way to put it. He also had a play where Drew threw it deep to him, and the defender was out of position. And would it have been a tough catch? Sure, but Jeudy goes up to get it. You've got to make that catch. I mean, and he'll make that catch, I believe, as he continues to progress. You look at a guy like KJ Hamler. I thought he played really well on Sunday against the Falcons, but he's dropped a punt in the last couple of weeks. He's young. He's still learning. You look at a guy like Noah Fant and what he did as a rookie compared to what he's been able to do when healthy this year. There's been a big improvement, and so yeah. So I think some of it is just you've got to stay in the same system, even if it's just consistency for consistency's sake. You've got to let these guys get some more experience, and just see what happens. And maybe you get to a point where you say this just isn't working. Like maybe you get to a point where you say our wide receiving core is not good enough with these guys, or our running back room is not good enough, or our quarterback has to be better. And these aren't fixable things, but I don't think we're at that point. I think you've got to see, there was no off-season program. Training camp was extremely limited. You looked at a team that could have really used preseason reps and didn't get them. And we talked about this all training camp, Phil, that, hey, maybe it's going to take a while for things to click. And then Drew goes out for 3 weeks and delays that process even more. And so we're seeing exactly what we expected to some degree. Now, it's hard to reconcile that with the goal of winning football games, but that's what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's exactly what I expected. I thought maybe those first couple of games it would have been slow, but I would have seen maybe some improvement as the season goes on. And you're definitely seeing that with certain players. You're seeing Jerry Jeudy, who's getting targeted a lot more now. I think that Pat Shermer definitely is listening to this podcast. I mean, that's obvious. He's getting targeted more, and you're seeing him make bigger plays. But overall, the offense just isn't quite where I thought it would be. I thought maybe going against the Falcons, I thought that they were going to have a sort of a breakout game. Didn't really see that. And
they have scored 27 points in consecutive games for the first time in almost 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, and we talked about the defense is playing a little bit off and, that kind of stuff. But I will agree with you, Eric, that this seems like growing pains to me. This just seems like a team that hasn't played that much football altogether. And you need consistency on the offensive side of the ball. One thing that Peyton Manning used to say was, I like when the head coach is an offensive-minded head coach because he's not going to leave to go get a head coaching job somewhere. He likes it when there's consistency there. And I think you can have consistency if your coordinator stays for a while. And it seems like Shermer might be that guy who might, this could be a good fit for him as this team continues to grow and the offense gets better and better. That's going to reflect well on him. And hopefully there's that consistency there where he ends up staying with Drew for a long time, because you just need that. You need to have a good, comfortable level, back and forth between Drew, between Pat, the rest of his targets there, because it just seems like sometimes they're just off a little bit, but you see the skill level. And that to me is the most important thing. You see Drew make some plays out there where you're like, that guy's special. This guy can do things that other guys can't do. He can run around. He can make any throw out on the football field. I think that he still needs to work on his mechanics, but that's something that is growing pains, still learning that. I do think that he tends to go to his right a lot. And Eric, we talked about this, during the game, texting back and forth. When he gets in trouble, he likes to scramble to his right. When he gets a snap, he immediately looks to his right. I think he can work on getting the ball to the other side of the field. Even that long throw to Jeudy down the sideline, he sort of just flicked that out there, and it just, went down the field, and he caught it down the sideline. That's not the best way for a quarterback to throw the football in that situation. Luckily those two connected there, and it was a huge play. But if your mechanics are a little bit better, the consistency is going to be better there, and you're going to be able to hit that big play more often. So to me, though, that's a sign of growing pains, versus, hey, this guy's just never going to get there. I do think that he is the guy. I think it's just that it hasn't all come together just yet, and it hasn't all worked perfectly in sync just yet. But when it does, I think this team could be really special on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, definitely. And, hey, if Pat Shermer ends up leaving for a head coaching job, that's great. That means that the offense is really good, because that means that teams are paying attention to Pat Shermer. With Drew, I agree. He needs to look to the left to throw more. I think it inherently makes sense that when he's scrambling, it's to the right, because you can move to your right and keep your body open to throw. When you go to the left, you can't, your body naturally closes if you're a right-handed quarterback. So I think that part of it makes sense. But you're right, he can look to the left, and there were a couple times after we were texting Phil where he did that, where he spread the ball around a little bit. So he was clearly knew what was going on. And I mean, I just think the Broncos are young, so there are going to be these times where they're inconsistent. I mean, you look at a team like the Chargers, who are also pretty young. I mean, they have times where they look great, and then there are times when they blow these leads. You look at a team like the Cardinals, who, I know is not super young, but they're led by a young quarterback. They have a home game yesterday against the Dolphins that they probably think we should definitely win that football game, and end up coming up short. I mean, those sort of things happen when you have a young team where it's not like when Peyton was here, where you play a bad team or a team that's that you're favored to win against, and you say, hey, maybe we don't cover this week the 9.5-point spread, but we know we're going to win because you just don't lose to this type of team. The Broncos, unfortunately, are not in that window right now. They're at a place where they've got to be on every week, or else they're going to lose to a team like the Falcons. They're going to lose to a team like the Raiders this weekend if they go out and play like they did on Sunday. But it doesn't mean that if they kind of have their stuff together that they can't get a win this week or get a win against the Dolphins. But the consistency just takes the longest to develop, I think.
Yeah, I agree. You can't play like that. I don't want to sit up here and make excuses for this offense because they have the talent. It's just that they're not there yet playing together as a team. And you knew going into this game that they couldn't afford to make the same mistakes, and they went out there and made the same mistakes and couldn't get the ball going, couldn't find the end zone in that first half. To me, that's the biggest priority now is getting off to a good start. Vic Fangio said it, we've got to play better at the beginning of the game. And, I think that that's going to come with time, but you do want to see that. I do think that there's a problem in the NFL in general where the money has gotten to the point where you need to see immediate success, where you're paying these guys, that they got to deliver, and if you don't deliver, boom, see you later. And so there's no more patience, and you heard Rich Gannon talk about that on the broadcast. He was like, heck, he wouldn't have made it in the NFL if he wasn't given the time, coming out of Delaware, and he ended up being a league MVP. So I do think that Drew possesses the skill and the natural ability. He just needs to get a little bit of time. And hopefully, I was going to say a big part of that is staying healthy and being able to get those reps and being able to, work with these guys and actually improve. And he was running around there in that fourth quarter, Eric, I was like, get down. I was like, please don't take these shots. And, because even if you lose this game, the much bigger picture, the much more important priority is getting reps for him.
Definitely. And I mean, that's where, maybe a team like the Falcons that has consistency on offense, that knows what Matt Ryan and Julio Jones can do. They don't practice on Friday. That's not as big of a deal to them as it is for the Broncos to miss a Wednesday practice. I mean, I'm sure that hurt the Broncos. Vic Fangio admitted that. Justin Simmons admitted the uncertainty of it all continues to impact them. I just think that you're looking at a clump of teams that's like the Broncos, the Dolphins, the Raiders, the Browns, the Chargers. They're all, they're split up here now by a few wins, the Colts. But the Broncos are probably the same type of caliber team. It's just the consistency. And if they win yesterday, we're talking about them at 4-4, and you're saying, wow, these guys have won 4 of their last 5, and they're doing all this. Is there a real difference in terms of the quality of the team if you're able to go down and score on that last drive? No, you're still the same team, but the kind of the lens just looks very different. And I think they could easily go to, or maybe not easily, but they can go to Vegas this week and win. It just, they're going to, the consistency, Phil, again and again, I think we need to see them be more consistent. And that goes past Drew, that goes back to just being young.
Yeah, I agree with you. The quality of the team doesn't change whether or not you go down there and win or score a touchdown or win the game there. I agree with you on that. I think that that's a really smart point, is that, the team quality isn't going up and down with each one of these wins, but the morale is. and what we talk about on this show is the tone of this show is very similar to last Monday's show. Even though the Broncos won that Chargers game, we're talking about a lot of the similar topics here. So, well, Eric, let's move on and talk about the Broncos' injury problems here. Of course, AJ Boye out with concussion in the concussion protocol. Shelby Harris did not make the trip out to Atlanta. He came into close contact with someone who tested positive for coronavirus. A late scratch before the game was Bryce Callahan. That meant the Broncos were without their 2 starting cornerbacks, and they were without any week 1 starter along the defensive line. So the defensive side of the ball took a major blow, and that's in addition to, Von Miller, Jarrell Casey, these guys who are Pro Bowl type players not out there. On the offensive side of the ball, we know what we already talked about, what happened on the offensive line there on the right side. Here's what Vic Fangio had to say on Monday about it.
Well, you just have to deal with it, a good carpenter doesn't blame his tools. He's just got to go find a way to get the job done. And that's my mindset with the players we have. And I love all our players. They're out there busting their ass each and every week in preparation. And during the game, they're giving us great effort. It's my job to find a way to get the solutions that will lead us to a win.
Eric, I'm pretty sure that I've heard Vic Fangio use that carpenter line before. That's one of his tools, I think, is that line.
Was it Noah Fant? I think maybe.
Yeah, something something last year. I think it was.
It was during mini camp in 2019. It was like just because you have tools, you're not a carpenter or something like that. I think it was Noah Fant he was talking about.
Yeah. You don't just go into the hardware store and get a bunch of tools and you become a carpenter. So I wonder maybe if Vic does some woodworking in the off season.
Could be nice.
Yeah.
No, I mean with the injuries. First of all, I'd like to say if I use that sort of language, Phil, we'd bleep it from the podcast. But Vic Fangio, he can say whatever he wants. This
is a family podcast. We don't talk about that kind of thing. But Vic brings a little bit of that tough nosed mindset, and when he uses language like that, it just it elevates the hardness.
Dunmore, PA.
Yeah, exactly.
Scrappy steel territory.
Dunmore, not Scranton.
No, very different.
Yeah, very different.
Eric,
tell me if I'm wrong here. That's not where Pittsburgh is, right?
There has been some confusion about this year.
Got it.
Among the media corps, but correct. Scranton, Dunmore,
other side of the state. Other side of the state.
Right. Yes, the Commonwealth, as we've heard many times this week.
Exactly. Yes, not state. It's a Commonwealth.
Exactly. Phil, I mean, the injuries are just getting hard to take. You have Malik Reed in place of Von Miller, Jarrell. I mean, you're playing offensive or defensive linemen 4 through 6, essentially. We mentioned the right side of the line. I think they probably win that game with Bryce Callahan just because maybe you're able to hold the Falcons to 20 points, 25 points. I mean, I truly think that matchup with Davante Harris was worth 2 touchdowns to the Falcons. I mean, he got beat deep. He got called for a couple of pass interference penalties. There was a time where the Broncos had, I think it was 3rd and 7, and they gave up 5 out of the first 6 third downs to the Falcons. There was one where if they got off the field, Broncos could go down and cut it to 1 score before halftime. Who knows if that happens? But instead, Davante Harris gets whistled. He essentially tackled Julio Jones before the ball got there. And the Falcons went on to score on that drive. And with Bryce Callahan, maybe you don't shut down Julio Jones, but then Michael Ojemudia can be on their number 2 receiver, whose name I'm not even going to, Zacharias or something. I'm not even going to try.
That was good. I think that was good. Yeah.
I thought Albert O was tough. This guy's name even harder, apparently.
Yeah.
But the corners were just asked too much. And I think, Phil, if the Falcons wanted to just throw it around in the second half, they probably could have. They got really conservative, but quite possible they could have scored 50 points if they had kept their foot on the gas.
That's why it's so misleading to look at some of these things and say, oh, well, the defense played much better in the second half, or, oh, the offense turned it on. A little bit misleading, but yeah, I agree. that route that Julio Jones ran on Michael Ojemudia for that touchdown, I mean, I don't blame Ojemudia for RIP his ankles, because I mean, that's just what Julio Jones does that. Do you know what I mean? And that's something that, Michael Ojemudia has gone up against some talented wide receivers as a rookie, and he's got a tough mindset. So I think that he's going to be okay and he's going to be able to come back. But man, that was one heck of a highlight. But Eric, that just said, if AJ Boye's out there, I don't know if he's necessarily doing all of that, and if Bryce Callahan is there, or if the pass rush is with Shelby Harris is getting closer, or if Bradley Chubb, is able to get there, then maybe it's a different game, but they weren't able to do those things. And, I do think injuries are a major factor, particularly on the offensive line. They were a major factor, just impossible situation there. And you knew it was going to be like that heading into it. So I know Vic doesn't want to make that kind of an excuse that he would refuse to do that, but privately he's got to be like, are you kidding me? I think a lot of fans feel like that, and he must be feeling like that too.
Yeah, and hopefully some of those guys get back this week. It sounds like Graham Glasgow, Shelby Harris will be back. Sounds like AJ Boye and Bryce Callahan have a chance to play. That automatically helps. And if Noah Fant can still go, he obviously tweaked his ankle early in that game. That's 5 starters you're adding back to the lineup, and that's not insignificant. So it would be interesting to go through, and you could just kind of see how many projected day one starters that the Broncos not have. I mean, it's at least 6, right, on the defensive side of the ball, because you have all 3 defensive linemen, you have 1 edge rusher, 2 cornerbacks, and then whether or not you want to say, hey, Josie Jewell versus Todd Davis. 6 or 7 defensive guys, 3 offensive guys, Sutton, Juwan James, Graham Glasgow. It's just that's a lot of guys that's half your starting lineup you're missing.
And we found out today that Albert Okwuegbunam is out for the season. He's done for the year. And that one made me upset, Eric, because he was starting to get into his zone where he was learning how to play this game a little bit, and he was able to, figure out how to get open, how to make some of these big plays. And that's part of the learning process, is being out there and playing and getting these reps. And he's going to miss that for the rest of the year. So as we heard from Fangio earlier, he said, at least it's just an ACL. It's not an ACL and an MCL, and he expects him to be ready for next season. But missing those reps, missing an off season, that's going to just further delay his growth.
That's where we are now. We're just happy when it's just an ACL.
Exactly, Eric. You got to be careful, Eric. Make sure you're drinking lots of tea. Make sure you're drinking some, just taking care of all the things necessary to be a quality R.
That's true. You can't let up.
Exactly. Eric, should we get to some voicemails and emails?
Let's do it.
Let's start with an email here. This one is from Mark Horning. I don't know if you recall last week, Eric. Mark had a YouTube comment that said that I was just a mouthpiece. Do you remember that one, Eric?
I do. That was one of my favorites. I enjoyed that one.
He sent in an email to neutralzoneshow@gmail.com. He says, Phil, calling you just a mouthpiece may have been a bit harsh. However, you're our mouthpiece, and we love you for it. Love what you guys are doing. Keep up the good work. I'm enjoying the Neutral Zone now that you put it on YouTube. So, Mark, thanks for sending that in. No hard feelings. I actually really enjoy the YouTube comments. I like when people are tough. I like that, Eric.
I like that too.
Let's go to an email from Jeff Flanagan. Jeff emailed us at 8:32 in the morning on Sunday, on game day. And he says, I don't know if you guys had a chance to read tomorrow's paper yet. So he came up with some headlines where he thought this is what's going to happen in the game. He thought these were some potential headlines. And he says, Broncos offense held keys to victory. Falcons D can't pick lock. It's pretty good, Eric.
Factually incorrect, but I like the notion of it.
Exactly. So there's some wordplay there. Can't pick lock.
I got it. I got that.
They did pick Lock though. That was a tough interception there late in the fourth quarter. Okay, he came up with this headline: Philip a switch. Lindsay explodes for 180 yards and 2 touchdowns, earning a bigger role in the run game. Nope, that didn't happen.
Wow.
Yeah,
That would have been impressive, though.
180 yards and 2 touchdowns would have been amazing.
Yeah, I would have liked that.
I do like the creativity though. Philip a switch. Anything that really is playing with somebody's name a little bit, I like that. Those kind of headlines. So never mind that
Wordplay.
it's Philip. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which, let's just get one thing clear. Philip is spelled with 2 L's. That's just how you spell that name.
Yes, we know.
Okay.
We got it.
And then the last one here from Jeff Flanagan was Flat Ryan. Flat Ryan. Bradley Chubb and Malik Reed combined for 5.5 sacks as Denver's banged-up defense continues to exceed expectations.
Do you think if he knew Bryce Callahan wasn't playing, that all these would have come in?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
We like the enthusiasm. We like the positivity.
Yes. Jeff is a big fan of the neutral zone, just FYI. So
Yeah, thank you.
we appreciate that. Because after the game, he called in and left this voicemail, a long one, Eric.
Hey, Phil. Eric with an R. Jeff Flanagan from Lancaster, California. That was a tough one. If there's anything positive we could take away from it, I like the fact that, we were down 21 points with 4 minutes left, and somehow, we still made it a game. Obviously, we're all hoping for, the offense to turn it around and play a consistent 4 quarters, but I think this is still promising. We certainly weren't stalled every drive like we were against Kansas City. So there's some good things to take away here. I'm not in position to second guess our coaching, and I'm not going to do that. I think that we're doing a great job. It's got to execute. But if there's anything I could wish for, like a wish list for the offense, it would be, I think we need to be more aggressive in the kicking game. We had an opportunity to tie things early in the first quarter, which might seem insignificant, but with a 59-yard field goal, you got to look at that and realize we're playing a top-ranked offense. We've got Brandon McManus, who is at least 50-50 from that range, I would think. And I'd like to see us, take more of those opportunities when we can. As you guys mentioned in the latest podcast, I don't think that this, eliminates us from the playoffs. Certainly it's going to require more work later in the season, but we're on the right track. 3-5, it isn't over, but yeah, I definitely wanted this one. Looking forward to hearing guys' thoughts. Have a good one.
Eric, there's a lot to unpack there. Okay.
There is.
First of all, he's mixing up a couple of neutral zone jokes, inside jokes here, because it's Phil with a PH and Eric with an A. That's how you spell the names. But both of us are R's.
Right.
As in reporters.
Yes.
Exactly. So
important to clarify.
Yeah. I appreciate that, though, because I like it when listeners get involved in our inside jokes. And the origin of that is that Drew Lock, when he first came to Denver, was referring to the quarterback position as the Q. He's the Q.
Yeah.
So when he said, look, I'm the Q, you and I naturally said we're both R's.
Right. And Ben Swanson is an A, which stands for artist, and he's trying out for the role of podcast supervisor and not doing a great job.
Hey, I'm staying out of that because I blasted him a couple of weeks ago and he got very upset.
He got very sad.
Yeah. You should have seen how you should have seen how exactly. I was going to say his art took a big shift. So that was but yes, Jeff, appreciate your voicemail and also your email. Thank you for sending those in. I think that we have some very positive listeners here, Eric. They're not getting discouraged. I'm not sure if I came up with the biggest wish list, though, it would be a more aggressive kicking game. That might not be where I would start.
I thought he was going to say aggressive offense, but
Yeah.
kicking game. I know Vic Fangio said after the game, "Hey, Tom McMahon told me not to kick it," which that was interesting that he said that. Uh, I don't have a problem with punting the ball there. It's only 3-0. The game is early. If you miss it, you're giving them the ball in really good field position where they need 20 yards to add more points. If anything, Phil, if you don't want to, using the timeout was not great because just make a decision. If you're going to do anything, I probably would have just gone for it. If you want to be aggressive at that point, it's 4th and 6. You just got a 9-yard play. Maybe just line up and throw the ball. See what happens. If that's the mentality you want to have.
Too early though, Eric. That would have sent
Yeah.
the message to me that, hey, we've got to score on every possession here or something like that. We don't have a chance if we just play normal football. And I agree. Hey, in that situation, you got to go to the special teams coordinator. He's been watching McManus through warmups. He sees what McManus has been doing out there. He knows where his range is at, and he doesn't let emotions play into that decision. So I think that it's okay to ask Tom, hey, what do you think here? I will be fair, though. I was talking to Jay Feely earlier this week, and he said that he's seen McManus in warmups before make it from 70 yards, Eric. But that's at elevation. That's at home here. So.
And when was it? Against New England that McManus basically said, I didn't want to try a 58-yarder because it's too far. He said, I know my stats from there are 50-50. I don't know. I think as a head coach, though, Vic Fangio just, gets the opinion from your staff, but then do what you want to do. It comes down to you ultimately. So do what you want to do.
Yeah, but you want to take input and say, hey, do you think he can make this? Yes or no? Okay. He says no. Then you internalize it and say, okay, no, punt. So that's how I think that flow went. So, but thanks to Jeff. Let's get to another voicemail here. Eric?
Hey, Eric. Hope you're well.
Eric, that was a whole voicemail. Just
where was the rest of it?
Nope. That was it. Just checking in to make sure that you are well.
It's nice that our supporters care that much about us.
No, like, hey, this is so-and-so calling from, XYZ. I got a question about the Broncos. Just, hey, Eric, I hope you're well. I know that a large chunk of our listeners are your friends. So I don't know who that was. I'm just saying maybe that this person knew you. I don't know. Did you recognize that voice?
I would pretty much only recognize your voice.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Well,
I think all of our listeners are fans of mine, and I consider them family and friends as members of Neutral Zone Nation. So I hope whoever that is, that they're doing well as well.
Thank you for the voicemail. Next time, if you want to just see how I'm doing, I wouldn't be upset. That's all I'm saying. I'm a human being, and I've got feelings too, Eric. So
yeah,
let's just consider everything here. If we're going to go down that route.
Right. And to whom it may concern, McTelvin Agim also doing well. Had a nice game. Had a pass breakup.
Sosa?
Just throwing that out there. Yeah, Sosa. Exactly.
Sosa. Got it. Okay, Eric, let's Sosa. Not Sammy.
Yes.
Not Sammy.
Yeah.
Okay, let's wrap up with our final voicemail here. Eric?
This is Brandon from Iowa doing my traditional weekly call-in. Initial thoughts of the game were not only wow, we are really competing with a team like Atlanta with such a depleted team injury-wise. I thought Drew was good. I thought they found more out of Judy than they thought they had originally. But overall, that was a very promising game, and I was honestly waiting for it to be 2 weeks sooner, pulling it out in the end. So off to next week. Thanks.
Eric, it makes me happy, though, that Brandon feels like it's part of his tradition to call in and be a part of the show every Monday. Appreciate the voicemail there. Brandon likes to watch a game, formulate his thoughts, and then call into the neutral zone. So I appreciate that. And he's a very positive fan too, Eric. A breath of fresh air there where he says, hey, he's just happy that they're competing in these games. And like you mentioned, Jerry Jeudy, his best game in the NFL so far.
Yeah, very positive. I think I'm excited to see his reaction when the Broncos go out and dominate at one point. It'll be a good voicemail.
That's going to be, he sounds a little bit somber there, and I think it's just because of the way the Broncos have played. When they win,
Well,
he's going to bring some energy on the phone.
Yeah. I will say, Phil, I think in terms of being positive, I tweeted out Drew's stat line from the last two fourth quarters, and there's a lot of like garbage time. He sucks. Do the previous 6 quarters. Blah blah blah. It's okay to have a little hope and just try to look for the bright side. And I'll also say, so that I feel like that game was exciting to watch in the fourth quarter. The Chargers game was exciting to watch. There's been some times over the last few years where it hasn't even been exciting to watch. So at least that's an improvement, I would think, from a fan experience. Even, I'm sure people are still frustrated. They want to win these games, but the quality is better, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. Eric, one last email here from our friend Honko Jansen.
Yes, love it.
He barely got in his question here, emailed right before we were about to record here on this Monday. But he left an email that goes on about how the offense he feels is a little bit too scripted. They script the first several plays there for every game. He wants to know if they can adapt effectively. He says, do you think our game plan is flawed, or do you feel like the Broncos just aren't executing, aren't able to adapt quickly to what the defense is doing? What do you think there, Eric?
I mean, I think if the game plan were flawed, you wouldn't see opportunities to make plays. You wouldn't see Noah Fant have a 32-yard gain. You wouldn't see Tim Patrick have a chance to catch a touchdown pass there. You wouldn't see KJ Hamler open in the middle of the field for a second. I mean, those are things that show you that the plays are working, that you're just a split second off here or there. I think they were pretty aggressive. I thought they threw the ball a decent amount in the first half. Obviously, some of that's the rushing attack wasn't working, but no, I just think, again, patience is going to be necessary here.
Agreed. So, hey, thanks for leaving a voicemail, sending in some emails. If you want to be a part of the Neutral Zone, call in 707-NEUTRAL, 707-NEUTRAL, Eric. And then also, if you want to send in an email, we'll read that on the air, neutralzoneshow@gmail.com. You can also reach us on Twitter at Eric Dalala with an A, at Phil Milani with a PH. Not really traditional spellings there, Eric, but that's who we are.
That's right. Kind of odd, but you'll get used to it.
Let's wrap up here with some shout outs. We forgot to do these last week, Eric, and Liz Manis, one of our dedicated listeners, very upset.
Very upset. Apologies to her.
She was upset.
Shout out as always. Maybe a shout out / game ball. I know it's a loss, but Jerry Jeudy, first 100-yard receiving game of his career. Thought he was impressive, and still, it's not like he played a perfect game by any means. So showed you maybe what he could be.
I said that if the Broncos throw it 35 times, he should get 10 targets. I'm now thinking maybe he should get like somewhere around 25 targets a game. That's what I'm thinking, Eric.
Yeah.
Could be nice. But that's a good shout out. I'll say shout out to the community department as always, doing some nice work. Last week, had a chance to host a Zoom call with some firefighters throughout the state, doing some great work, battling a lot of these forest fires. And so some players were able to hop on that and still getting creative with how they can make an impact in the community. And that's going to be even more important here as we head into the holiday season, Thanksgiving around the corner. I know that they've got a turkey drive of sorts in the works. And then, of course, more as we head into the holiday season, Eric.
That's right. Love to see it adapting in unusual times.
Yes, adapting. So, all right. Well, we will be back later on this week and getting set for Raiders week. Eric, did you see the end of that Chargers game? Did you see the end of it?
They just lose in such horrifying ways. 2
goal line fates. That kind of surprised me.
Yeah. Maybe run Herbie on a little QB sneak, a little draw, something like that. Get creative. Yeah.
Keenan Allen, maybe you could have gone there. I mean, one of the best wide receivers in the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was surprising to me. Almost caught both of them though, so
It's true.
hard to argue.
Almost,
with that.
it
So,
definitely counts.
yes.
So.
In horseshoes and grenades or something. What's the line
And grenades, yeah.
in The Office? I forget that line.
Yeah, that's just a saying.
No, I know, but doesn't like Dwight mix that up or Michael or somebody mixes up what the saying is.
Yeah.
You're the connoisseur of The Office.
This is good content.
Yeah. Oh, are we still recording? All right, we'll be back later in the week talking about the Raiders. Until then, for Eric Dalla, I am Phil Milani. You've been listening to
The Neutral Zone.